know, death is hard to deal with. Going through a grieving process is something that no one wants to experience. But death and grief are even more challenging and more difficult when that death has been traumatic, when it has come violently and unexpectedly. On day 3 here of Counseling from the Cross, we're looking at Jesus, who is on his way to death, and we're looking at his provision, and we're discussing grief. But what did Jesus provide, do you ask? Well, it says that when he was on the cross and noticed his mother, he looked at her and said, "Woman, behold thy son. Son, behold thy mother." In that time, when a father has died, it became the eldest responsibility to take care of mom. Joseph was dead, and now he was dying, so now who's going to take care of mom? Well, he didn't just focus on the fact that he couldn't breathe and his body was in agony. He looked down at her and said, "Woman," which was a very loving and endearing way of saying, "Ma'am, woman, behold thy son." Not me, but John. "John, behold thy mother." Meaning that, Mom, from now on, John is going to take care of you. And John, I need you now to take care of my mother. And it said that from that day forward, she went into his home. And it's so beautiful that in the midst of such agony and atrocity, God was showing Mary that I still see you and I'm taking care of you. That's just the beauty of God, that when life gets to lifing, right? When things happen, they're not outside of his knowledge. They're not outside of his time or understanding. He's very aware of all the things that we cannot see. And he has provided for every dark way and unlit path that we cannot see. And so that's something that we can take hope in today, that if we find ourselves facing death, facing grief, that something has died in our life, and it was unexpected to us. It was not unexpected to God. And we can sit back with faith, anticipating how he is going to provide, because after all, he is called Jehovah Jireh, the one that provides. But then you still have to grieve. You still have to deal with this new reality that was imposed upon you through death. And that's the tough thing with grief, when that death has come unexpectedly. Not only has that person died, but their dreams, their hopes, their opportunities died with them. Your hope, your passion for them, your ideas and things that you wanted to do with them, in one instant were snatched away from you. From a bullet, from a knife, from a heart attack. And that one moment that when they, what is the word they called? When they pronounced the death, it wasn't just a pronouncing a death on them. It was actually pronouncing a death on something else in your life. Or at least that's the way it feels. So what do we do who are the Johns in their lives? That we're the loved ones now who are called to say, listen, take care of them. How do we do it? How do we help someone who is experiencing traumatic and complicated grief? What do we do? Well, I encourage you to just follow the example of John. Make space for them. This doesn't mean that you have to invite them into your home necessarily, but if you can, do so. But what it does mean is that in your life, in your normal, is that you make space, time, and opportunity for that person to come into your space and love on them. You love them as they work through denial, simply unable to accept that their loved one has died, that in their mind they're still alive and they're still here, and any moment they're going to walk through that door and they're going to call again. You make space for them to work through that. It's a form of love. You make space for their anger at who killed them, their anger at them not taking responsibility for their death, their anger that that person has died. You make space even for their anger at you. Why you? Because you didn't cook the pot roast the way he did. Why? Because you didn't paint the wall the way he would. Why? Because you didn't take care of the children the way she would. Make space for their anger, because it is simply them trying to process and accept the new change that has happened in their life. Make space for when they begin to bargain and say, I feel like if I had just done this, or I had just done that, they would still be here. If I had taken him to the doctor sooner, if I had insisted that they come with me to church, if I had insisted, no, go to this school or that school, if I said, no, you can't hang out with that friend. When they're trying to grab anything in their life to say, if I had just done this, they would still be here with me. Make space for them to have all the thoughts and all the feels, because it is needed for them in order to be able to move forward in life. It's part of the grieving process. And when you make space for them to do that, you're demonstrating love. And you're allowing them to go through the process of building their mental health to be able to grab what has changed in their life. Make space for their depression. Make space for the moments when they say, I want Haagen-Dazs for dinner and breakfast. You might let them have that a few times, but you say, no, we're not going to do this all the time, right? But make space for those moments. Make space for the moments when they say, I just want to be in bed. You can join them and watch a sad movie with them. Make space when they say, you know what, I just need some alone time today because I got to learn how to be alone. You're not abandoning them, but you're making space for their autonomy, to have some sense of control in an uncontrollable situation, because none of us can really control death. It is a part of life, and it's going to happen whether we want to or not, whether we're prepared for it or not. If you are willing to make space for that person who has been thrown into a new normal, you make space for their denial, you make space for their anger, you make space for the bargaining, and you make space for the depression. That can help to push and usher them into a place of acceptance, where they can say, yeah, he died, she died. And it's easier to talk about them in the past tense because I've come to accept that it happened. I miss them, but I'll be able to live now. And I can go on and I can move forward with them. Why? Because my friend, my brother, my sister made space for me to walk through this. And I can experience a new hope with my new reality. So we don't have to be afraid of death so much. And we don't have to be afraid of grief when we know that there are people around us who are going to make space for us. They're going to provide for us. This is how you can show up and represent God to somebody else. Because God doesn't leave us. He does not forsake us in times of grief. He is there with us even when we can't feel him or trace him. And your willingness to be present in someone else's life, your willingness to make space for them, can show them that God made space for me when I was hurting, that God made space for me when I was struggling, that God sent that person into my life, and that's the reason why I am not struggling with depression today. But even if you do get to that space where the depression does sit in, where the sadness is just too much, and you have to go to therapy to get that extra bit of help, that's also okay. That is okay. Go get that help. Go talk to that person. Make space for the therapist in your life, because we came into this field to make space for you, to hold hope for you until you can hold